Part 114. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1131. Chapter 1131. Come on, let's hurt each other. Luzong's hands curled up in his sleeves were clenched, but they were extremely weak, which made him even more irritated and angry. The third princess didn't pity him at all, and said to him, "One of us is cruel and unfilial, and the other is not true, but we are a perfect match. So we will torture each other for the rest of our lives, and don't think about harming others." Others. Luzong's pupils shrank and he didn't say another word. After they came out of Cunning Palace, the third princess sent eunuch Feng to the imperial study room to tell them and plan to leave the palace. As a result, the two of them walked to the corner of the Yang Road and met the prince. The prince hugged the snow-white little fox and was using a handkerchief to wipe off the water drops on its back, completely ignoring the dirty clothes. Seeing the third princess and his wife coming over, he smiled and said, "Father is busy, so let me see you off. I will come back often in the future." Father doesn't say anything, but he is worried about it in his heart. The third princess looked a little warmer and responded, "Okay, brother prince. I have finally moved out, and you will have to work hard to take care of your father in the future." As she spoke, she took the little fox, stretched out her hand to tease it twice, and said with a smile, "Sanjo went to play somewhere, and got all wet. No wonder he didn't want to come out of the palace with me. It turns out he found you. This depends on it." She weighed 3 of them, nodded at its forehead and said, "Gludgy little fox, if you get fatter, you will be like a pig." Sanjo shrunk his head and pretended to be dead. "Recently, I heard too many people say that he has gained weight and that the fox has become numb. He is the third princess." The third princess was helpless, stroking the fox's fur as she walked, and occasionally said a few words to the prince. At the palace gate, the little fox jumped into the prince's arms and raised his neck. The prince rubbed the underside of its neck skillfully, very intimately. The little fox was holding its big fluffy tail comfortably and didn't think there was anything wrong with treating the prince of a country as a slave. But Luzon couldn't bear it anymore and asked, "Isn't this little fox the princess's? Why is it kept here by the prince?" The prince smiled faintly and replied, "Does it make any difference whether you raise it with me or with the princess?" Luzon's face suddenly darkened. The third princess was so happy that she stabbed her again without hesitation, "Consort, it's time to go back to the princess's mansion." Luzon closed his eyes hard. Consort. Princess mansion. A dignified man has become a vassal of a woman. He is no longer the crown prince, no longer the father-in-law, but just, the husband of the princess. In the hot summer, these cognitions he was avoiding suddenly hit him like a heavy hammer into the cold hell. The third princess sneered, ignored him, and nodded with Kaiun and others. Kaiun and others immediately stepped forward, followed the consort, and walked forward until they got into the carriage. Lu Feng has been isolated from the princess's palace for 3 days. Now he specially stood in front of the palace gate, hoping to see his master. However, before he could step forward, he was blocked by a guard carrying a knife. Until the carriage was far away, he did not say a word to his master. If he dared to charge forward, the guards would draw their swords and chop him without hesitation. These 500 guards were personally selected by the emperor and sent to protect the 3 princesses. Won't give face to anyone, only obey the orders of the third princess. Even the prince cannot give orders. This is the confidence and majesty the royal family gives to their daughters. When the sun was setting in the west, everyone who was a guest at the Li family said goodbye without saying anything. Mrs. Gio was a little exhausted, but she still held Mrs. Li's hand and muttered, "Sister, we have agreed to meet again in a few days. You have to come, I haven't told you enough yet. Don't worry, I'm still thinking about trying your favorite Hawaiian cuisine, and I'll definitely go look for you. Mrs. Li smiled and helped Mrs. Jia out. Tao Hongying accompanied Mrs. Jia Mrs. Lu, and Mrs. Seeing that there were no outsiders around, she lowered her voice and reminded, after you go back, you can tidy up your home when you have nothing to do. There will be news in the palace tonight or tomorrow. I'm afraid it's going to be quiet for a while. News from the palace? Quiet for a while? Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Jia guessed the reason almost immediately. However, Mrs. Seeing did not move around often and had little information, so she was unable to react for a while. Wanner stepped forward, held her mother's arm, and explained a few words in a low voice. Mrs. Seeing's expression changed and she nodded quickly. Jiyan brought Shui Ling and Shui Yun with him, and they were sorting out the gifts in return. The family's fleet brought back scallops, dried abalone, fish maw, etc. from the south, as well as fresh sea fish, shrimps, and crabs, as well as ice-cold baskets of lychees, peaches, jade melons, and golden fruits. Mrs. Lu and others were shocked when they saw it. She felt that the things she sent were too frivolous. Let's not talk about how precious these dry goods and seafood are, let's just talk about the fruits. These jade melons and golden fruits were specially set aside by Broken Gold Beach for my family, and they are no longer available on the market. Those peaches as big as the mouth of a bowl, even if the stewards insist on buying them, they will have to wear iron shoes to find them. The most rare thing is lychees. They are transported by fast horses from the south every year. One lychee is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. Not even the 6 ministers know how it tastes. If the princess hadn't grown them here, they probably wouldn't know what lychees looked like. The basket of lychees was carried to the car. They were reluctant to eat it all themselves when they got back, and they had to give away most of it as gifts. It's hard to say, but it can also consolidate or develop some connections for the family. No matter how grateful they were, no one refused. Firstly, they really need it, and secondly, they don't want to let down the Li family. But after they returned, the first thing they did was to take out the good things from the bottom of the box and deliver them to Li's house before it got too dark. Of course it is not a gold or silver treasure, but a fine gauze material, which is cool and beautiful. It is specially used to make a skirt for Jiyan. Sure enough, the Li family happily accepted it, and Wanner even planned to make some skirts for her sister-in-law overnight. When Li Laoer, Mr. Wen, Jia Huan, Jian and others came back, the slaves from several families had just left. The aroma of food lingered in the yard, and it was obvious that Tao Hongying had just prepared dinner. The whole family sat around, chatting while eating, until the dining table was removed and the women and maids were kicked out to eat, and everyone in the courtyard was alone. Everyone sat under the eaves, eating lychees and talking about business. Li Laoer asked, "Brethren, how does the emperor look when you enter the palace to deliver lychees?" When Jian went to the yamen, he brought 2 baskets of lychees and entered the palace first, not giving anyone a chance to find anything against the Li family. At times like this, you have to be cautious. Rumors are sometimes sharper than knives. What if someone says that the Li family is disrespectful and gives lychees to relatives and friends but does not pay tribute to the emperor? Are relatives and friends more important than the emperor? Even if it is finally explained clearly, it will inevitably lead to trouble. Jian nodded and responded in a low voice, "Second uncle, don't worry, the emperor looks good." Maybe he was waiting for the third princess to enter the palace, but the emperor didn't say much to me. He only asked me to discuss with Shang Guan and write down the notes first, and then when the court meeting play again. My dear children, I have an update today. I am spending time with my children during the holidays, so I can't write anything down. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1132. Chapter 1132, Falling Out in an Instant. Li Laoer was slightly relieved. For the time being, it seemed that the emperor had no other thoughts. At least he was treating their family as usual. Mr. Wen also received a letter from his wife yesterday. He is very satisfied with the current situation of his wife and children and does not worry about it. Instead, he was more concerned about another thing. How has your uncle been busy lately? Have you done all the things you discussed earlier? Jian quickly said, Sir, don't worry, Brother 11 and I have been helping uncle prepare, and Brother 3 and Brother Liu Yang have also participated. The safe place has been prepared, the manpower is reliable, and even the traces of the ships have been wiped out by my work from the Foreign Affairs Department. No one will be suspicious. After all, there are many storms on the sea, and several ships were lost. It's normal over there in Quanzhou. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief after hearing this. The escape route is like the jewelry an old lady keeps at the bottom of her suitcase. You may not necessarily wear it all the time, but you must have it. Mrs. Li hesitated for a moment and asked, Second brother, is this place in Zindu already so dangerous? I heard them gossiping today, and it seems that there hasn't been much change. Li Laoer didn't want to scare his mother, but if he didn't make it clear, if something happened, the old man wouldn't know the truth and would make things wrong. So, he said most of it carefully, focusing on the impact on his family and what might happen in the future under the severe situation. Orange Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying's expressions became worse the more they heard this. Especially Mrs. Li, she was very happy when she heard her granddaughter talk about it earlier. The prince actually grew up in Sujintan. This friendship is enough to ensure that his family will be safe during the succession of the throne. But at this moment, she suddenly realized that maybe the Li family and Sujintan would be destroyed before the prince came to the throne. She couldn't help but whispered, probably not, the emperor and the marquis have grown up together since childhood. It's just military glory, there is no need to it, and the marquis won't care. Besides, the marquis said how many times, after the northern expedition was over, he wanted to disband and return to his fields and travel around the world. At the end of the sentence, the old lady's voice was almost inaudible. I don't know whether I want to persuade everyone or convince myself. Tao Hongying patted her mother-in-law's hand and spoke to comfort her, but there was a bit of coldness in her eyes. Mom, what we ordinary people care about is food and clothing, but that person is in that position and has been suppressed by the Queen Mother for half his life. He must be more concerned about face and hopes to leave a name in history. How could he give up the glory of recovering rivers and mountains and then be scolded as a waste for hundreds of years? It's just pitiful that the marquis, who devoted himself to the peace of Tianwu and the unification of the country, fought for 10 years, and finally ended up like this. Mrs. Li was flustered and unwilling to believe this. She looked to her granddaughter for some support. Fu Niuer, look at. Sighed at the good news, feeling uncomfortable in my heart. She also wanted to lie to her grandma and make her feel at ease, but the truth could not be concealed if she wanted to. No one could guarantee that the secret would be exposed one day. Miscellaneous, if my guess is correct. In fact, that person doesn't necessarily want his adoptive father to die, but he is about to drive the barbarians out of the border. That person wants to hold back Beijing until he can sort out the affairs in Zindu. Everything has been arranged, and we will find a way to temporarily let the adoptive father leave the battlefield. In this way, if any general were to command the final decisive battle, history books would record that that person was wise and powerful. Although he was forced to move the capital during his reign, he eventually regained the lost territory and unified the country. It's just that that person had a good idea, but current events are changing rapidly, I'm afraid. Before she could finish speaking, there was sudden movement outside the yard, but it quickly disappeared again. When everyone looked over, a figure turned over from the courtyard wall. Before anyone could recognize him, Ji Yin had already shouted, "Brother Mu, what's wrong with you?" After saying that, she ran over. Muju was covered in dust, his face was gray, his lips were chapped, and he looked as embarrassed as a beggar on the run. He nodded to reassure the good news, and then said one word in a hoarse voice, "Water." At this time, Jian also rushed over, and the brother and sister helped Muju to the eaves of the corridor together. Muju's legs were trembling. It was obvious that he had been riding a horse day and night. Li Laoer quickly poured the sour plum soup to Muju and asked, "But something happened in Jiangbei?" Muju nodded and shook his head, then directly took the white porcelain pot of sour plum soup and drank it to his heart's content. Everyone's expressions changed and they couldn't help but stand up, full of anxiety. Orange Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying held hands tightly, fearing to hear the news that Mr. Li was injured. Muju put down the porcelain pot and said, "The Marquis was assassinated, but he was not seriously injured." The Northern Expeditionary Army camped for 3 days and postponed the decisive battle. The Marquis sent a message and moved south quickly. Assassination. Migrating south? Everyone's expressions changed instantly. Although they had already guessed, when the day actually came, they were still at a loss. Why was the Marquis assassinated? Where was he injured? Where is the fourth child? How is the fourth child? What happened? Jian was also trembling in her heart. When she thought that her adoptive father and father were in danger, she wished she could fly directly to Jiangbei. She tried her best to persuade herself to calm down, and then took a few warm buns from her bag and stuffed them into Muju. At this time, no one bothered to wonder why there were buns in her satchel. Muju glanced at her gratefully, then choked down a bun, and then said quickly, "I didn't see the Marquis, it was Uncle Dashan who sent me a message." The fifth barbarian prince led a night attack, and the fourth master injured his arm. Did not play. The Marquis brought General Zhang Cheng and Wei Erniu to fight. The fifth barbarian prince was defeated. The Marquis was about to pursue the victory, but a dagger was shot from behind. Fortunately, Wei Erniu reacted quickly and helped, and the dagger struck the Ho. On my shoulders. The dagger contained blood-activating poison. The fourth master used life-saving pills to save the Marquis from pulling out the dagger, and his life was saved for the time being. The Marquis personally ordered to camp for 3 days, and then continued the battle, driving the barbarians out of the border in one go. When everyone heard this, their hearts felt like a roller coaster, going up and down. Jian caught the key point anyway and asked, "The dagger attacked from behind? Was it one of our own who did the stabbing?" Muju choked on another bun and nodded. Not only that, the poison on the dagger was recognized by the military doctor. The military doctor once worked in the Imperial Hospital, and the blood-activating poison came from. Muju pointed in the direction of the palace and did not continue, but everyone understood. The courtyard was deathly quiet, and the air seemed to be frozen. Even if Nuanfeng reaches the wall, he will take a quick detour and run away. Pa, Li Laoer grabbed the tea bowl on the table and smashed it into pieces. After all, I still think highly of that person, the most ruthless emperor's family, the friendship that we have been dependent on each other since childhood, and the benevolence and righteousness are not as important as his life and reputation. The Marquis has been fighting for 10 years, regardless of life and death. In order to regain the country he lost, he actually stabbed him in the back at such a time. What a beast! Worse than a pig or a dog. Mr. Wen also looked very sad. Although he knew that expecting an emperor to have a conscience is like expecting a cat not to eat fish, in the past 10 years or so, the emperor had indeed treated the Marquis well. He even loved the house and the crow. People also take a little extra care. Where did you think of it? You would fall out in an instant. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1133. Chapter 1133 Emergency Plan. On the other hand, old Mrs. Lee calmed down surprisingly when the incident came to an end. Second brother, Mr. Wen, was the assassination carried out secretly and did not want outsiders to know? Does that mean that the person didn't want outsiders to call him ungrateful and ungrateful? Doesn't it mean that he didn't want to show off his face directly? These words reminded Li Lao. He and Mr. Wen looked at each other and said, "Mom is right. Since that man values fame and wealth, he will not ruin his reputation until the end." So the Marquis was assassinated, not was directly recalled to Zindu. Tao Hongying couldn't help but ask, "Then our family should move south immediately?" Li Lao responded, "Yes, at least the old people and children should be sent away as soon as possible." Jiyan was the first to respond, "I can't leave. Only I can find out the news in the palace, and I also have a backup to keep my father and adoptive father safe at the critical moment. Besides, there are too many people staring at me. If I leave, I will be discovered immediately. It is best to remain silent when moving south. By the time others are alert, we have already completed the retreat." Old Mrs. Lee was anxious and shouted, "No, Fu Niuer must leave this time. I'll stay and come forward if something happens. I can always hide it for a few days." Tao Hongying was also fighting for it. "If it doesn't work out, my mother and Fu Niuer will leave, and I will stay." For a time, the old and the young began to argue that they all wanted to stay and leave the opportunity for others to retreat. Muju naturally didn't want the good news to be in any danger, so he tried to persuade him. "It took another day and night to get the news to me. Maybe the Marquis has already started the decisive battle. Once the barbarians are driven out of the border and Jiangbei is completely recovered, that man will definitely rush back and become angry. The Marquis and the Fourth Master are in Jiangbei, and they have not relinquished their military power. There is nothing that can be done for the time being. The target of venting hatred will definitely be our family. That's why the Marquis sent a message asking everyone in the family to move south, because no one who stays can stop the development of the situation and can only lose his life in vain. If he is imprisoned, it will become a tool to persecute the Marquis and the Fourth Master." This makes sense, and everyone was silent for a while. The whole family, old and young, have all moved away. No one is left, which is obviously unrealistic. Someone must stay behind to cover up the situation for a period of time, and the aftermath will also be dealt with. Put it in someone else's home, and no one will want to keep it. But when it comes to the Li family, no one wants to leave, everyone wants to stay. Li Lao walked twice under the eaves with his hands behind his back. Just as he was about to speak, a Qingyu bell suddenly rang in the distance. One voice after another, spreading far and wide in the dark night. The entire Zindu, inside and outside, instantly became quiet, and the buzzing of insects disappeared without a trace. Li Lao turned to look at everyone and said with a wry smile, "There's no need to fight. I'm afraid most of the family will be left behind." Jiyan also looked extremely ugly. Originally, no news came out in the afternoon. She thought that the palace would not announce the funeral until tomorrow morning. Who would have thought that when the news from Jiangbei was sent to me, the bells in the palace were ringing? It was as if a big hand had arbitrarily disrupted all the arrangements, making the situation even more chaotic. She thought for a while and said, "My grandma and I want to go to the palace to mourn, but my mother doesn't have to go. The entrance to the village is sealed, so we can't get in or out. Then we secretly send the old people and children on the boat, and go to Quanzhou first. After a few days it was discovered on the same day and the ship has moved away. There should be results on the other side of the Yangtze River." Li Lao and Mr. Wen both nodded. Mrs. Li desperately wanted to send her granddaughter away, but as her granddaughter said, there were some things she couldn't do without her. Now that she was crying in the palace in front of others, she couldn't leave at all. In desperation, she could only say, Hong Ying, take the old people and children in the village and leave quickly. Wanner and her son have to leave too. Don't fight for it. If you stay, you won't be able to help, but you will be held back. Tao Hongying was about to object when she opened her mouth, but Wanner was unwilling to agree. Jia Huan also rushed to say, I'm not leaving either. I'm often in the restaurant, and my sudden absence will definitely arouse suspicion. I'll stay to help the family. But Li Laoer came to a conclusion, listen to mother, Mr. Wen, Jian and I both have official positions and cannot leave. Mother and Fu Niuer can't even do it. Now the young and old in the village can only leave it to their younger siblings and their wives. As long as you are safe, we will have no worries. Also, Brother Huan must leave with the ship. If the queen passes away, the restaurant will definitely close. Secondly, Brother Cat is too out of touch, but you should be more stable and help your aunt and sister-in-law take care of the old, weak, women and children on the way. Jia Huan has no excuses. No matter how unwilling he is, he can only nod. Li Laoer then continued, the 3 boats we prepared previously have been hidden in Jiangchizi, 100 miles away, and are being guarded by Zhang Feng. We are just waiting for this day to move quickly with our family members. Now, 2 boats are sending young and old people to move south quickly, and the remaining one can pick up the remaining people at any time. Let's quickly divide the tasks and act immediately. While the queen is mourning and everyone is paying more attention to the palace, the opportunity just right. Ji Yan immediately took out a pen and paper, and Li Laoer started writing. The village chief must be notified, and all families, old and young, who can be relocated must be moved, and the village is closed to the outside world. When they can't hide it, they say that the children have been taken on a study tour by their husband. Mr. Zhang must go with the ship. In this way, if the palace finds out, he will be the children's talisman. It can be said that the prince was raised by him. Now it shouldn't be difficult to use this friendship to save a group of irrelevant children. The Lu family, the Jiao family, and the Xing family also have to send news. If the 3 of them also want to send their children to avoid danger, then they can go together. If you don't think it's necessary, then help cover it up a bit, at least don't ruin things because of ignorance. At the Marquis mansion, the chief steward must also be notified, explaining the whole story and making preparations. It is best to find a reasonable excuse and send away some irrelevant people to avoid causing disaster to innocent people. Over at Luoan, we need to inform Li Lao-san immediately. The cafeteria is full of villagers, and Brother Cat had better go south with the boat. Mr. Wen thought of Guo Wenhao and said, don't forget to send a message to Wenhao for me and ask him to go to Quanzhou with us. This kid is my disciple and will definitely be implicated. Li Laoer advised, don't say that. Once a teacher, he is always a father. He became your disciple and received a lot of care from you and your wife. Now even if there is some danger and he is going south, he will definitely not complain. That child is a sensible person. Mr. Wen nodded and added, remember to inform the Lu family first, in case Mr. Lu intends to let Jimin and Xiuji go south together. Yes, I think so too, Li Laoer quickly added. As well as the military camp doc, Li Daong must also be informed that the Marquis has been assassinated, so that he can be fully aware of it. Perhaps in critical moments, he may be required to the elderly, weak, women and children to ensure their rapid relocation. Zhengjiazhuang is known as an old servant of the emperor's mother's family, but he has been working for the Marquis and Jiyan for so many years. No one can guarantee whether he will be liquidated, so he must be informed and be prepared to deal with it. As for whether to move south, it all depends on the wishes of the Zheng family. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1134. Chapter 1134. No one sleeps peacefully this night? Jian has no idea of ordering or forcing. After all, it is difficult to leave the homeland, and no one is willing to leave a foreign country unless it is absolutely necessary. Let's not talk about Zhenjiazhuang, just thinking about the old and young people in Sujintan, I can't help but have a headache. Persuading them to leave must be an extremely difficult task. With the collective efforts of everyone, everything was quickly arranged and then distributed quickly. At night like this, the city gate is closed and it is not easy to get out of the city. Fortunately, the servants in the family are all capable, and there are more than a dozen veterans, so it is not difficult to deliver the letter safely. Muju had eaten and drank enough. Although he could not rest, his expression had improved a lot. He washed his face and offered to go back to Sujintan to deliver the message. Jiyan stopped him and asked, "Is there a way to take me there? It's just you. I'm afraid I won't be able to convince the village chief." Everyone also looked over, obviously feeling that the good news was right. Muju smiled mischievously and replied, "Of course there is a way. Don't worry, I will definitely be able to take you out easily." Jiyan glared at him, went back to the room, changed into a pair of neat clothes, and put on a curtain and hat, hiding herself tightly, and then set off with Muju. Of course, Shuiling and Shuiyun also followed. They brought the good news letter and went to Sujintan to pick up the horses, asking the two of them to transfer and rush back to Zhenjiazhuang. In and outside the new capital, every family was in a bit of a hurry because of the queen's death. Change out brightly colored items at home, prepare plain clothes, etc. Families who are getting married soon are even more troubled, because they cannot have wedding banquets and drinks within a month, and the date must be postponed. In this way, a few figures slipped out of the earl's mansion and scattered in all directions, like small water droplets blending into the sea, without making any sound. In the Lu family's residence, Mrs. Lu had made some preparations because she had received the news in advance. So, when they suddenly heard the bell, everyone was not in a panic. The servants in the front yard and the women and maids in the backyard each perform their duties, quickly replacing items, hanging spiritual flags, and preparing vegetarian food and clothing. After Mrs. Lu arranged everything, she still felt uneasy, so she simply went to the study room in front. Sure enough, Mrs. Lu and Lu's Haiheng were both awake and chatting while drinking tea. Mrs. Lu said, "Dad, are you going to the palace early tomorrow morning? Where did you put the water bag the princess gave you last time? I asked someone to fill it with frozen sour plum soup. Also prepare some snacks. Don't forget it. Bring it on." Mr. Lu was very happy with his daughter-in-law's filial piety and thoughtfulness. He smiled and nodded and said, "Okay, I'll have someone bring the water bag to you in a moment." Lu's Haiheng hurriedly interjected, "Madam, there is still me. Make sure you prepare more for me, otherwise it will be embarrassing if I am carried out due to heat." Mrs. Lu disliked his son, glared at him and cursed, "Lowering your fat body from now on will not serve any purpose except adding trouble." Lu's Haiheng was not angry either, jokingly saying, "Don't worry, Dad, I'm so fat that I get a little hotter in summer, but I still have to bear the cold in winter." Mr. Lu and Mrs. Lu both laughed. This is the advantage of getting the news in advance. No matter how big the matter is, you will not panic if you are prepared. At this time, Lu's Haiheng's personal attendant suddenly came in and whispered, "Old master, madam, Uncle Li sent Zheng He to deliver a message." Zheng He? The three members of the Lu family were all surprised. Zheng He was the most trusted person around Li Lao Er. Coming to the door like this in the dark of night could mean that something big was going on. "Please come in quickly," Mr. Lu nodded. Lu's Haiheng was waiting at the door in person. He greeted Zheng He and asked, "Why are you here so late? What happened?" Zheng He bowed his hands and turned around to look at the door. Lu Haiheng immediately asked his chief attendant to guard the door. When he was the only one in the room, Zheng He lowered his voice and told the story. The expressions of the three members of the Lu family changed dramatically when they heard this, and they were speechless for a moment. Zheng He urged, "Old master, what our uncle and Mr. Wen mean is that the man may not have made up his mind to break up, so he sent someone to assassinate him instead of recalling the marquis. But it's hard to say how it will develop in the future. In case it becomes more serious, we must be prepared. I have to rush to the academy again to inform the third master and the villagers. In addition, the seventh young master will board the ship overnight to help the fourth lady and rush to Quanzhou with the young and old in the village. This is about letting brother Cat go to Quanzhou." Old Master Lu immediately told his daughter-in-law, "Go pack your things and take Hyman and Jiajia with the boat to go south. If anyone asks, the family will say that you went to visit relatives." Mrs. Lu objected at the time, "No, Dad, many people saw me when I went out today. Leaving suddenly would easily arouse suspicion. It would be bad if the Li family's arrangements were discovered. Besides, the queen in the palace is not allowed to mourn, so even if I don't have to cry in mourning, I will be inseparable from home and abroad. Let's Hyman and Jiajia take the boat south with the Li family's arrangements, everything will be fine." Old Mrs. Lu looked at his son and nodded when he saw Lu's Haiheng. He sighed and said, "Well, I'll write to Hyman Jiajia and ask you to prepare more gold and silver." Mrs. Lu immediately ran to the backyard. Lu's Haiheng was worried and followed her. A quarter of an hour later, Zheng He carried a small package, left Liu's house and headed straight out of the city. Similarly, in the Xing family yard, Mr. Xing and Mrs. Xing were also stunned. After panicking, the two briefly discussed a few words and quickly packed their son Xing Ning's luggage. The eldest daughter in the family is the daughter-in-law of the Li family's grandson. She moves around a lot on weekdays. If something happens to the Li family, the Xing family will definitely not be able to escape and be punished together. Sending away Xing Ning, the only boy, is to send away the hope of the Xing family. The old couple are left with no fear of being imprisoned or beheaded. Besides, when my son arrives in the south, there is still his biological sister Wan'er, so there is no need to worry about it. Xing Ning burst into tears on the spot, and 10,000 people were unwilling to leave. "Mom, I won't leave. I have grown up and have a reputation. If anything happens, I can help Dad." "Silly boy," Mrs. Xing held back her tears and persuaded her son earnestly. "In front of the imperial power, not to mention your fame, even your father's official position is not enough. Even the Li family and the marquis, don't they still have to avoid the itch? And the situation is not serious now, so I have to prepare in advance for you to go to Quanzhou. Maybe nothing happens, so you can just go to the south to see the world and study for a while. When the situation in Zindu is calm, you can come back. Mother, I'm still waiting to get the top prize." Xing Ning wanted to speak, but Mrs. Xing was already covering her chest and coughing. Xing Ning didn't dare to make her anxious, so she could only keep her mouth shut. "Good son, my mother only has 2 children, you and your sister. When you go, you are also helping my mother take care of your sister and nephew. You have to work very hard to make your mother feel at ease." Xing Ning immediately said, "Don't worry, Mom, I will take good care of my sister and my little nephew." Mr. Xing also stepped forward and patted his son on the shoulder. "Fortunately, your marriage has not been decided yet, otherwise it would have delayed this girl. After you get to the south, if everything depends on your sister, your marriage doesn't have to be of the same family, as long as you like it and your sister agrees. Do you understand?" Xing Ning choked with sobs and knelt down to kowtow to his parents. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1135. Chapter 1135, Sharing the Blessings and Sufferings. The darkness of the night quickly swallowed up Xing Ning's figure, making Mr. Singh and Mrs. Singh burst into tears. After a long time, Mrs. Singh wiped away her tears and took the initiative to shake her husband's hand. "Master, thank you for not asking me to leave together." Mr. Singh smiled bitterly. "I know you won't agree if I try to persuade you, so I won't make you angry. In short, as long as I live, you will live, and our husband and wife will never be separated. As for the child, well, it depends on God's will." Seeing his frown, "Mrs. If you enjoy it, of course you have to bear the burden of it." Mr. Singh held his wife's hand tightly and nodded gently. The couple stood in the night, not talking for a long time. Similarly, in Mrs. Jia's yard, Mrs. Jia was putting a stack of banknotes into Dong Mei's hand. She said sincerely, "Tomorrow I will tell Beza that she is sick and quietly send her to a relative's home. Our Jia family has a humble position and Beza's brothers are outside, so even if something happens, they won't be implicated too much. So, this time I won't send anyone with the boat south. Please take this stack of banknotes back with you and tell the princess and the fourth lady how much I appreciate their kindness. This money can be used as pocket money for Warner and her son on the road, which is what I want as an aunt. Also, please don't worry, no one in our family will know about what happened tonight except me." Dong Mei didn't try to persuade her and accepted the banknote. Mrs. Jia took out another gold bracelet and gave it to Dong Mei. "Thank you for the trip. Please be safe on the way back." Dong Mei hesitated for a moment, not wanting to accept it. But Mrs. Jia directly put it on her hand. "Although I don't often go to Rujintan, I also know that you are a person who is trusted by the princess. The fact that the princess can send you to deliver the letter shows her affection for me and Beza. I am grateful from my heart, so don't refuse." Dong Mei nodded, then bowed and left Jia's house quietly. Actually, compared to the Lu family and the Singh family, the Jia family's chances of being implicated are indeed slim. But I have to say, if something happens, if the Jia family is left alone, then the old friendship will be ruined, and there may be even enemies. Dong Mei's martial arts skills were good, and her coming and going did not disturb anyone in the Jia family. But the personal nun who kept vigil for Mrs. Jia's wife still knew about it. At this moment, she quietly entered the room and asked hesitantly, "Madam, can I help you with something?" Mrs. Jia shook her head and responded, "Don't talk to anyone about the people coming tonight, including the second master. Go to sleep, we will be busy tomorrow." Mammy quickly agreed and quietly retreated. Mrs. Jia looked at a certain location outside the window. It was a side room, and her husband was sleeping soundly with his concubine in his arms. The Li family sent someone to find her privately, and their intention was very clear. The Li family believed in her, but they could not trust the Jia family. Because she is Wanner's biological aunt, Beza plays well with the princess, and the Jia family benefits a lot. But if we really know that the Li family is in trouble, not many people in the Jia family are willing to share the burden. Luoan is still some distance away from Zindu, so it was already midnight when Li Laosan received the news. The situation was not good during this period of time, so he was very alert at night. The death knell in the city rang again, and everyone in the cafeteria came out to watch, looking a little panicked. At this time, Zheng He suddenly arrived, and the fool also guessed that something had been arranged at home. Zheng He asked Li Laosan to find a quiet room, and whispered everything in a low voice, and then said, "My uncle means, please find an excuse to take the villagers back to Sujintan early. Who wants to go to Quanzhou and set off with the ship? As for the seventh young master, he must be sent away, as well as Mr. Guo. Mr. Wen also wants him to go south." The Lu family also sent letters to the two young masters, and they knew it as soon as they read it. Li Laosan tried his best to stay calm, and after a while he said in a deep voice, "Okay, I will let everyone pack their things and go back to Broken Gold Beach overnight. Brother Mao and the other boys will sleep in the small courtyard outside tonight. Son, I'll tell you in person. Zheng He nodded and followed Li Lao-san out. At this time, there was a knock on the canteen door. It turned out to be Dean Zhou's personal attendant. After a few words of greeting, he said, Master Li-san, the dean just met with several gentlemen. We were supposed to be away from summer vacation in a few days, but now we have caught up with the Queen. If he passes away, he will simply start tomorrow. The students will leave and come back after a month. So, it's best not to prepare ingredients in the canteen, otherwise they will be wasted. Thanks for the trip, brother. When I got back, I told the dean that the weather was too hot during the day and we couldn't sleep right now. So we just packed up and hurried back to Sujintan. If anything happens, could you please send someone to the dean? Just go to the Earl's mansion or Broken Gold Beach and say it. Li Lao-san took the opportunity to leave quickly, which was natural. Chang Sui really didn't think much about it, and left after chatting for a few words. Li Lao-san immediately called all the people and told them to pack their bags immediately and return to the village soon. No one knew what happened, but it had been a few months since they came out. They were all thinking about home and were happy to go back and stay for a while. Li Lao-san was afraid that they would not understand the seriousness and cause trouble, so he told them, there has been a big change in the village. Let's talk about it when we get back. Be careful. Everyone immediately stopped laughing and got busy quickly. Li Lao-san took Zheng He and rushed all the way to the small courtyard. As expected, the Cat brothers were also awake, sitting under the eaves and fanning themselves, wondering whether the college was going to have an early holiday. Suddenly seeing Li Lao-san and Zheng He coming back, the boys were keenly aware that something was wrong. Brother Cat asked in a low voice, Uncle Third, is there something going on at home? Li Lao-san nodded and said, my family needs to move south urgently, so hurry up and pack your belongings and come with us. After saying that, Zheng He also stepped forward and gave the letter and package to Hyman and Xiaja. The brothers looked at it quickly. Xiaja stopped and shouted anxiously. No, I won't leave, I want to go home. Jimin, however, had a sullen face, slapped his brother on the back, and scolded him in a low voice, don't make trouble. Grandpa and parents must have considered this arrangement. Even if we stay, we won't be able to help. On the contrary, it will be a hindrance. In case, if something happens to the family, we live in hope, and we can avenge the family while we are alive. Xiaja wanted to say something else, but his brother dragged him back to pack his things. Brother Cat also wanted to object, but Li Lao-san simply interrupted him, you must go south, the family has already decided. Besides, it is impossible for only your fourth aunt and sister-in-law to take the villagers south, so you have to help take care of them all the way. There is no idiot in our family, don't be confused at this time. Brother Cat clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and turned back to the room. Li Lao-san then patted Guo Wenhao on the shoulder and said, Mr. Wen asked you to go south together. He is here in Zindu, so don't worry about it. Guo Wenhao's face was full of confusion and panic, and suddenly he was like a dark cloud blown away by the strong wind. Okay, I'll listen to you, sir. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1136. Chapter 1136. This is a difficult problem. Jimin and Xiaja were packing their things in the room, and when they saw Guo Wenhao come in, they didn't look sad, but rather relaxed. Xiuji couldn't help but ask, Wenhao, do you really want to leave home? Guo Wenhao shook his head and responded, no, I don't want to leave. But I'm happy, I am also a child who is looked after. Xiuji still didn't understand, but Jimin understood. He gave his brother a tug and urged, "Pack it up quickly. Don't take too many things. It will be inconvenient on the road." Soon, everyone had packed up. Li Lao-san patted the boys on the shoulders one by one, gave them instructions carefully several times, handed them over to Zheng He, and went directly to Zheng Feng. He then turned to the canteen and joined the villagers to return to Broken Gold Beach. The small town of Luoan was built on the basis of Luoan Academy, and most of its residents were the families and servants of the students. The death knell has just sounded in Zindulai, and news of an early holiday has spread in the college, and everyone is anxious. Some were busy picking up the students, while others were preparing to hitch their cars and rush home at dawn. In this way, the Li family's carriages and horses left the town without looking very conspicuous. Jiyan followed Muju and climbed out of a slightly dilapidated corner in the north of the city. It only took half an hour to reach Broken Gold Beach. At the bayonet at the Erkin Bridge, there were two veterans who were responsible for guarding the bridge. They were really startled when they suddenly saw the princess returning in the dark night. They didn't say much about the good news. They just asked them to let the heads of each family come to the old house to talk. The veterans did not dare to neglect and hurriedly went to inform separately. When the good news arrived at the entrance of the village, Uncle Zhao was sitting under a big tree chatting with the patrolling villagers. It was a hot day and no one had anything to eat, but each person held a gourd and drank water. The village chief couldn't sleep at home, so he came over to join in the fun, holding his hands behind his back. As a result, not long after he sat down, Jiyan and Muju came back. This is... The village chief was confused for a moment and didn't know what to say. The good news asked Muju to knock on the door, and also asked the patrolling villagers to invite the heads of each family to come and talk. Uncle Zhao and others all changed their expressions, and suddenly they remembered the relocation many years ago. Soon, torches were lit in the front yard of the Li family, illuminating everything as bright as day. Village people arrived one after another and soon filled the yard. Perhaps they had guessed that something big was going on. Everyone looked panicked, but no one dared to speak out. Jiyan has been thinking on the road of Jiyan that it can neither cause panic, nor does not pay attention to it. This is really a problem. But say it no matter how difficult it is. Now that everyone was here, she said, "Dear folks, the northern expedition is about to end, and now is a critical moment. I believe everyone knows it, right? But some evil people are jealous of the achievements of the Marquis and my father, and have been secretly plotting to steal the credit, but now they are targeting our village. Our village moved here from the Northland. We have been working diligently and our life is peaceful and prosperous. However, when it comes to power, we are still humble. And over the years, the population has increased. If we are not careful, we can easily be attacked by evil people. If someone finds something, they will be threatened with persecution. So, our family discussed it and took advantage of the fleet's return to send the villagers to live south for a while and see the different scenery in the south. It could take as little as 2 or 3 months and as long as half a year. The northern expedition was successful. When the situation in Zindu improves, the fleet will send everyone back. Of course, everyone has just heard the death knell. The queen has passed away. If you go out at this time, it is easy to be called disrespectful, so everyone should be more cautious when coming and going. It's just a matter of packing your luggage overnight, taking only gold and silver, and trying to get on the ship before dawn. There was a deathly silence in the courtyard. Everyone could hear clearly, but their brains just couldn't react. You are obviously living well, living a prosperous and comfortable life, but why are you suddenly going south? Even if someone wants to plot against the Marquis and the Fourth Master, military glory, and prepare to find excuses from them, it will not threaten the whole village, right? This is hundreds of people, old and young. How can you just abandon your home that you have lived in for more than 10 years? The village chief, Uncle Zhao, Lu Baiatu, and others know more about the inside story, so they can naturally guess more. The situation must be very critical, otherwise the princess would not have rushed back overnight to urge everyone to move. The village chief asked tentatively, "Princess, do you have to leave? Should the whole village leave? Will it be more suspicious if someone leaves the village so suddenly?" Uncle Zhao also agreed, "Yes, Princess. We still have to carry water for watering in the fields, and there are workshops in the second village. We can't just throw everything away." The words of the two people seemed to have pressed some switch, and the people in the village started shouting. "Princess, my son is getting married in half a month, so, there is no way he can just leave. And in my family, my daughter will get married in a month, and the dowry is all ready, so we can't change the date. What should I do if the children study? How many months will classes be suspended? If you leave the fruits on the mountain for a few days, the weeds will grow as high as your waist. What should we do about the business in the workshop?" Jiyan tried her best to hold back her annoyance and said, "The orchards, fields, and business are all external possessions, and keeping safe is the most important thing now. We can build the rest in Sujintan, and we can do the same in Quanzhou. When it comes to marriage and the like, if you can postpone the date, postpone it, if you can't postpone it, then cancel it. What else is more important than life? Enough chatter, the children of each family must go south, as for the rest, I will decide who will be left to look after the family in the village after discussing with the village chief." It was rare for everyone to see such serious good news, so they all shut up for a moment and did not dare to say anything more. But they all looked at the village chief, hoping that he would come up with an idea. The village chief thought for a while and invited Jiyan into the house. It was hard to hide the good news from anyone but the village chief, so I made it clear what happened in Jiangbei. The village chief was so angry that he almost broke his pipe and pot. But at this time, there was no time to vent his anger. He thought for a while and said, "Princess, I know you want to protect the people in the village, so it's best to go south to keep them safe. But the inside story of this matter cannot be told to everyone now, so it is even harder to arrange. But everyone has lived in Broken Gold Beach for so long. This is already our hometown, so why are we willing to leave so casually? Young people may be fine, but those of our age like me and Lao Zhao may not want to bother anymore. The villages on the left and right cannot be left alone and empty, and they must be concealed from outsiders. Why don't I go and tell anyone who wants to stay, don't stop them? Of course, the child must go." Jiyan also knew that this was the best result and could only nod. So the village chief went out first and spoke loudly to everyone. "This time is indeed very dangerous. If you stay, you may be in danger of your life. So anyone who can move should quickly follow the arrangements and take their children south. The eldest man has been in Quanzhou for many years and has also bought manors and fields and done business. I will definitely not leave everyone without a place when they get there. But if there are those who are not afraid of death and are really unwilling to move, then you can accompany me, an old man, to look after the house. Of course, if there is real danger later, don't complain, it's your decision. Hurry back and discuss with your family, and pack your children's luggage. Meet at the entrance of the village in half an hour." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1137. Chapter 1137, Shattering Hinton's Backbone. The villagers did not expect that the village chief and the princess would agree to this after discussing it for a long time, and finally gave up any hope. Although they are still a little confused, the habits they have developed over the years have made them extremely trusting of the village chief and the Li family. At this time, obedience is the only option. So everyone turned around and ran home. But Uncle Zhao and the others not only did not leave, but instead found a place to sit down. Jiyan sighed. Needless to say, they had made up their mind to stay and look after the house. She tried to persuade her, but Uncle Zhao waved his hand in advance and said with a smile, "Princess, stop talking, the weather is hot, drink some water, don't waste your time on us. Our old fate should have been left at the foot of the mountain when we first fled, but everyone took it seriously and took great efforts to bring us to Broken Gold Beach. For so many years, we have had to eat and drink, and we have enjoyed a lot of blessings. It stands to reason that we should have gone to see the Lord of Hell a long time ago. We have taken advantage of us for more than 10 years, and we are satisfied. Something happened this time, and everyone went south, and we didn't want to hold them back any longer. We stayed behind to guard Broken Gold Beach for everyone who really thinks that our life is worth killing, and we are not afraid. After all, there are young men like us in the village who will avenge us in the future, right? It's just that these boys know how to play wildly on weekdays. It's really a bit of a family feud that urges them to become sensible earlier." Uncle Wei also smiled, as if he was happy to sacrifice his knife to pave the way for the boys. The village chief couldn't help but stare and cursed with a smile, "You don't know what to say, why are you trying to scare the princess? If you want to stay, you can stay. No one cares. Everyone is busy. If you should go on patrol, go patrolling. Be careful if someone comes to take advantage of the situation." Uncle Zhao took the lead and stood up, jokingly saying, "Look, we are working so hard that we can't sit still for a while. Let's go on patrol." After saying that, several old men called "Dehei Erhei" and went out. Ji Yin's nose felt sore as she looked at their staggering backs. Muju, who had been watching all this quietly, stepped forward, halfway to block her, and then gently held her hand. No one knows this feeling better than him. After all, he has also experienced the life and death of his relatives. He advised softly, "You have tried your best, don't blame yourself. Everything will be fine." Ji Yin silently shook his hand and said, "Let's go, follow me to invite Mr. Zhang." "No, you stay and rest, I'll go." Muju was reluctant to leave the good news and sat her down, then turned and walked out the door. The village chief called a literate boy, got paper and pen, set up a table, and planned to record everyone who came or stayed. Soon, villagers who had packed their luggage began to gather again. As expected from the good news, almost all the families sent away their children and young couples, and all the elders planned to stay. It is hard to leave the homeland. These 4 words are not said in vain. Back then, they went all the way from Jiangbei to the south. After all the hardships they endured and how many times they fought for their lives, these old people cherished their current life so much that they couldn't bear to part with their homeland of Broken Gold Beach, which held all their hopes. They are like big trees that have grown for many years and no longer have the strength to uproot all their roots and move again. On the other hand, children and young couples have not yet completely taken root. They can start over in the south and even develop better. The village chief also sighed and persuaded again, "We don't need so many people staying in the village. Don't worry about your family. Just follow when it's time to leave. After all, no matter how sensible the children are, they still need the guidance of the elders when they go south." A man in his 40s smiled honestly and responded, "Village chief, we have thought about it. The orchard in the village is about to be picked, and the fields are inseparable from carrying water for a while. I really can't bear to do it. Although the children are young, they will still be taken care of by the elders when they reach the south, so we can rest assured." Another old lady also added, "Actually, even in the village, the parents take great care of the children's education and clothing, and we don't have much care." A woman hugged her son and echoed, "Besides, aren't the old lady, the 4th lady, and the princess all allowed to leave? If we stay, we can always help. When something really happens, we need people to stand in the way. Yes or no?" After saying that, she gave her son a hard push and motioned for him to stand with his friends. With 30+ young couples, about 80 people in total, all with swollen eyes, obviously very reluctant to leave, but no one cried out at this moment. The village chief suppressed his sobs and nodded repeatedly. Okay, well done, these are the people from Broijinten who have the backbone. At this time, people from the second village also came over. Similarly, those carrying luggage are children. All veterans, wounded soldiers, old people, and even young women stayed. Without waiting for persuasion from the village chief and Jiyan, Xiaoqiu acted as a representative and stood up and said, "The men in our family are still fighting in the north. No matter what, we have to wait for them to come back. After being away from home for several months, we have to fight for our lives with our heads hanging on our belts. How can we let them in without even having a bowl of hot food?" The elders also nodded, "Yes, we don't believe it. Those officials in the court are so cruel. Our son is killing barbarians for Tianwu, and the court doesn't care whether we have enough food and clothing, but they will chop off our heads, then we are just being ghosts and supporting our son to return to Jiangnan." The veterans and wounded soldiers were all excited and laughed loudly. "Yes, uncle is right. When the time comes, we will also go into battle with swords. Maybe we can cooperate inside and outside and directly capture the new capital. Don't worry, I'm missing one of my hands. If I face those weaklings guarding the city gate, it's not a problem to kill 10 of them." After a few laughs like this, it turned out that a veteran said something serious. "It was thanks to the good fortune of the Marquis and the kindness of the Lord that he took us in to live and work in peace and contentment in Sujintan. Sujintan is now our home. No matter what happens, we cannot leave. What's more, now that the Marquis is away, we have to guard Broken Gold Beach. Otherwise, how can we have the face to see the Marquis in the future? We have never escaped on the battlefield, but now we are embarrassed? No, no. Children, just leave, don't worry about home, we old killers are here." Everyone nodded along. In the courtyard, the air seemed to freeze for a moment. Everyone feels tragic, grateful, and has the courage to unite as one. Only no fear and no shrinking. "Don't worry, everyone, the children will definitely be safe as long as I'm here," Mr. Zhang responded loudly, and strode in from outside the courtyard, accompanied by Muju. Everyone immediately became noisy, saluted one after another, and wanted to say a few words of thanks, but it seemed that nothing could express their feelings. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1138. Chapter 1138, linked to each other. Mr. Zhang signaled everyone to calm down, then personally helped the village chief who was saluting, and then said, "Everyone knows that the prince grew up with me, and I still have some dignity. I will protect the children along the way. Go south. I can't say that the children will be safe, but I can say that anyone who dares to harm the children must step over my body first." Mr. Zhang. Thank you, Mr. Zhang. I will have to ask you to take care of the children from now on. Mr. Zhang, please take care of yourself and let me take care of you in your old age. The villagers could no longer bear it, their eyes were red, and they called for the boys to kowtow to Mr. Zhang. Jiyan also stepped forward, looking a little guilty. This time, in order for the children to evacuate smoothly, she really had no choice but to kill first and then force Mr. Zhang to them. Actually, Mr. Zhang could have stayed and lived a lifetime of prosperity and wealth by virtue of his contribution to raising the prince. "Mr. Zhang, I'm sorry, Mr. Zhang did not let Jiyan finish, and responded with a smile, "Princess, you don't have to be like this, these children are also my students, and I should protect them. Besides, I have long wanted to go south to broaden my horizons, and now is the time. Good chance. If the princess feels sorry for me, then give me some gold and silver. I am a poor person. When I go to the south, I can only swallow my saliva when I see so many delicious food, but it is too miserable. Actually, as a half-adoptive father of a prince, how could he be short of money? Mr. Zhang said this just to make everyone feel more relaxed. But Jiyan still took out a handful of banknotes from her bag and stuffed them all in. Mr. Zhang also accepted it generously, and then the villagers said, "Look, I even accepted the hard work fee, so don't be polite. Say goodbye to the child quickly, we are about to set off." The villagers were reminded and quickly grabbed the child and gave instructions. At this time, Li Laosan finally came back with the canteen staff, so another round of greetings was inevitable. On the way, Li Laosan had already spoken briefly to everyone. So, when the village chief asked everyone, Aunt Wu was the first to say, "We all planned to stay, so we came back directly." Dazu's wife also responded, "Yes, village chief, we won't bother anymore. Just evacuate the children. We can't help others if we stay, and we are pretty good at making a big pot of rice." The village chief sighed and stopped trying to persuade him. Jiyan was thinking about his brothers and asked his third uncle a few words. He was relieved to hear that they had left with Zheng He. After a while, the carriages and horses were ready. Lu Biao stepped forward and said, "Princess, I have discussed it with the village chief. This time, I will go south with thee on the boat." "Princess, I need to worry more about this at home." Jiyan nodded and responded, "Okay, brother Liu Yang has been married for so long, uncle should have gone over to take a look." At this time, the village chief shouted to the children to get on the car, while the other young couples rode horses. Everyone was worried about the danger on the road and was afraid that the noise would be too loud and attract attention. In the end, only 10 veterans were selected to protect the convoy. Jiyan and Muju rode on the same horse and led the way. In the dark night, the remaining villagers stood under the big tree at the entrance of the village, watching the carriages and horses drive away. No one dared to say goodbye loudly, but they could only shed tears silently. Even if you shed tears, you must wipe them away quickly, for fear of being unlucky. Everyone in the carriage and on the horse had tears in their eyes. The separation was so unexpected and so sad. But just like dandelions, I don't know when the autumn wind blows, and I will send the children away to take root again in a distant place and grow stronger. Due to a long-term drought, the Jinsha River, which was originally rich in water, has almost shrunk by half. Jiangchizi, the deepest part of the river, could barely hide 3 large boats. When he received the news, Zhang Feng quietly set off with 2 large ships and rushed to a small pier more than 10 miles east of the military camp pier. The wharf is where people from nearby villages temporarily dock while fishing. Now it is convenient for the Li family to evacuate their people. Zheng Sanjiang moved here a few years later, pretending to be a fisherman, but actually just for this moment. At this moment, he was hiding in the woods near the fishing village, waiting quietly. In the military camp, almost all the soldiers were asleep. Li Daong, however, was dressed in armor and walked out of the room holding a sword in his hand. His bodyguard stepped forward and asked, "General, why haven't you rested yet? But do you have something to give?" Li Daong nodded and asked, "Who is patrolling the river bank on the east side tonight?" The guard thought for a while and responded, coming back to the general, "It's Lieutenant General Su Hong." "Let's go, take 100 brothers with me to change defenses." Li Daong lowered his voice and urged, "Try not to alert outsiders." The bodyguard was a little confused, but still obeyed the order. Soon, a group of them left the military camp and headed east. Vice General Su Hong was born in a poor family and had no pride. He got along well with everyone in the camp. He was yawning and releasing water by the river when he suddenly saw Li Daong coming over. He was startled and joked casually, "Why is the general here? We are patrolling seriously and are not lazy at all." Li Daong smiled, raised his hand and stuffed him with a jade pendant, and said, "Isn't it your youngest son's first birthday tomorrow? But there is something going on in the palace, so I'm afraid we can't celebrate with wine." This is my birthday gift to my child. I won't do it for you again. You'll be on duty for half a night, go home and have a look. Oh, how can this be done? Su Hong was so moved that he refused again and again. He was in the military camp all year round, separated from his family, and suffered terribly. Last year he took the initiative to move his wife and children to a village on the west side of the dock. He would go back and visit occasionally when he had the chance. This time, his wife has been thinking about his youngest son's birthday for a long time. He originally planned to take leave tomorrow to go back to celebrate the child, but the Queen passed away suddenly, and it was obvious that the plan was ruined. Unexpectedly, the general actually remembered and not only gave him a birthday gift, but also helped him free up half the night. Li Daong patted him on the shoulder and pushed him, "You're welcome, I can't sleep either and I happen to be walking around. Just go back and come back before breakfast so as not to delay the business." Hey, thank you so much." General Su Hong couldn't refuse any more, so he happily took a few guards and rode home. Li Daong and his men quickly took over the patrol and drove the previous soldiers back to the camp to rest. The dark night is still quiet, only the river is flowing. Li Daong looked to the east and stood silently, with a complicated look on his face. The moment he had been worried about had finally arrived. This is why he did not dare to leave the camp for a moment. Fortunately, Mr. Ho is not in danger, and his family also has the opportunity to evacuate. Time passed little by little, and the first thing Zheng Sanjiang was waiting for was Zheng He, who brought several cat brothers and handed them over to him. Zheng He returned to the city and went to the Ho mansion. The housekeeper of the Marquis mansion arranged 30 guards to help take Jiawen and Xining, as well as Tao Hongying, Wan'er and her son out of the city. Although restaurants and several shops are about to close, the family still needs to be warned before they can leave with peace of mind. Tao Hongying is even more so. She has to return home within 2 days and has too many things to arrange. Wan'er also explained the trivial matters in the Earl's mansion. The third wave that arrived were the carriages and horses from the village. Muju put down the good news and turned back to greet the people from Zhenjiazhuang. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1139. Chapter 1139 Silent Farewell. Just like ants moving, all the people who are leaving are gathering little by little. As expected, the rest of the people in Zhenjiazhuang were unwilling to go south. They only asked Shui Ling and Shui Yun to bring over 20 children and 2 young couples. Ji Yin comforted him with a few words, and then went to see the 30 guards sent by the chief steward of the Ho mansion. These 30 guards are all tough and absolutely good players. With them going south together, everyone can feel more at ease. The good news makes me feel sour. Needless to say, these manpower were specially arranged by the adoptive father before he left for the war. I just don't know what he was feeling at that time. I must have expected this day, but I didn't want it to actually come. The woods are not big, but with more than 200 people and carriages and horses, it can be said to be very crowded. But no one in the crowd made any noise, even the horses had bits in their mouths. If anyone happens to pass by and see this posture, they will probably be frightened. Tao Hongying kept holding her daughter's hand and whispered one sentence after another, wishing she could give her lifelong instructions. Ji Yin couldn't help but hugged my mother, and she didn't want to let go. Tao Hongying's tears quickly soaked into her daughter's shoulders. Until 2 large ships appeared at the small pier. Zheng He went to confirm and sent the signal for action. Tao Hongying quickly wiped away her tears and began to give instructions quickly. Children get on board first, then the women, and finally the adults. Brother Kat, Ximen, Xiaja, and Wenhao walked up to Jiyan and wanted to say something, but in the end they all turned into a tight hug, including Ximen, Xiaja, and Wenhao. At this moment, they suddenly felt very regretful. Usings. On the contrary, the younger sister can stay in Zindu and weather the storm with her family. Jiyan guessed their thoughts and comforted them softly, "Don't think too much. The days are long and there will be opportunities in the future." A few people nodded heavily, turned around and strode onto the boat. Jie Huan patted Muju on the shoulder. Muju thought he was going to ask him to take good care of the princess. Unexpectedly, Jie Huan said, "Be careful and don't take risks just because of your righteousness. You are also our Li family now. If something happens to you, not only my sister, we will be sad." Muju was stunned for a moment, then laughed. "Second brother, don't worry, I will take good care of myself, and I will also take good care of the princess." Jie Huan nodded, hugged his sister again, and got on the boat. Jiyan calculated in her mind and looked into the distance again. Is there anyone else who hasn't come? Muju wondered. Just as Jiyan was about to speak, a figure quickly approached. Dongmei finally appeared with the unconscious Aunt Wu behind her. She took several breaths out of exhaustion before saying, "Princess, am I not late?" Jiyan breathed a sigh of relief and quickly said, "No." Previously, the village chief wanted to send his wife to the south, but Aunt Wu did not agree and refused to leave. In desperation, the village chief asked Jiyan secretly and came up with this idea. When the carriages and horses had left, Aunt Wu lost her guard, knocked her out, and then asked Dongmei to send her over alone. "Thank you for your hard work, Aunt Mei. Send Aunt Wu on the ship and leave her to my mother's care." Dongmei responded and jumped onto the deck in twos and twos. Tao Hongying had just heard about it and had been waiting for it for a long time. When she picked up someone, she didn't forget to wave with her daughter a few times. Jiyan also waved her arms vigorously. Even if her mother couldn't see it, she still tried her best to smile brightly. Two large boats rowed across the river, and as they arrived, they left quietly again. Everyone watched silently until no more shadow could be seen. Jiyan took a deep breath and told the veterans, "Go back to the village. Pay attention to safety on the road. From now on, you will listen to the village chief's orders and report anything at any time." The veterans saluted one after another, took their carriages and horses and left. Zheng Sanjiang continued to lurk, so he handed over and left with Zheng He and Zheng Feng. Muju and Jiyan were left behind to take Shuiling and Shui Yun back to the city, and Dongmei followed them. "Princess, there is nothing going on in the village, but you and the old lady are going to the palace. Let me stay with you during this period." Just as Jiyan was about to speak, Muju persuaded her, "I'm going to get busy right now. I feel relieved that Aunt Mei is by your side." Jiyan could only nod his head, and everyone rode to the outside of the city. Muju took the horses away. Jiyan lay on Aunt Mei's back and sneaked into the city with Shuiling Shui Yun again. In the Earl's mansion, Mrs. Li, Mr. Li Lauer, Mr. Wen, and others were all awake. Seeing the good news coming back, they quickly gathered around. "How is it, did everyone evacuate safely?" Jiyan nodded and carefully recounted the list of people who had been evacuated. Of course, those who stayed had also read it. Old Mrs. Li sighed, "I knew that most of the people in the village would not leave." Jiyan didn't want Grandma to worry about it, so she said, "Grandma, don't worry. Don't say that things haven't reached the worst situation yet, but they have reached an irreversible point. I will hand over the land deed, shop, and manpower of Rujintan directly to the third princess. Or the prince, they will definitely keep everyone safe. First of all, the people in the village have not committed any serious crimes, and secondly, the broken gold beach and all the businesses are like a cornucopia, and no one is willing to break it, right?" Old Mrs. Li was stunned for a moment, then smiled bitterly and patted her granddaughter. This is your cornucopia, why would you give it up? Grandma, money is all external things. As long as our family is well, I can start dozens of profitable businesses anytime, anywhere, and buy a bigger and better manor. Ji-Yin hugged Grandma's arm with a smile. Quickly change the subject. It's going to be dawn soon, and we both have to go to the palace to kneel down. At this moment, you can go and get some sleep, and I'll ask Shui-Yun to prepare something. No matter where we are, we must eat well and drink well, so that we can. If you don't suffer, you won't suffer. Old Mrs. Lee had stayed up all night, and she really couldn't hold on anymore. She was helped into the house to take a nap, and naturally there was Grandma Chang and others to take care of her. Ji-Yin gave Shui-Yun a few words, and reviewed the situation with his second uncle and Mr. Wen. Only after confirming that nothing was missing could he feel completely at ease. No matter how long the night was, the sky still lit up little by little. Not to mention that everyone was busy changing clothes and entering the palace, but in the princess's house, a plain hand opened the bed curtain and shouted, "Kayun, come in and wait." The door to the inner bedroom was pushed open immediately, and Kayun entered with a basin in her hands. She quickly helped her master get dressed and wash herself, without even daring to glance at the mess on the bed. It wasn't until the third princess changed into her white mourning clothes that the man on the bed became anxious and cursed feebly, "Princess, you can't humiliate me like this. I am the heir apparent of the royal family, and you have always kept a pet, and I also want to enter the palace to keep vigil." The third princess didn't even turn around. She straightened her sleeves slowly and responded calmly, "Why did I humiliate my consort? I just wanted to show sympathy for your serious illness and leave you to cultivate yourself in the mansion. Besides, when you returned home, didn't you offer incense to your mother? Don't worry, I will explain it to my father and the prince brother later, and they will definitely not punish me." 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1140. Chapter 1140. The royal people are all double-standard dogs. With that said, she walked out. The door of the house was closed again, blocking the faint morning light. Outside the door, the third princess once again ordered the guards, "The prince-in-law is weak and needs to rest. No one is allowed to visit and disturb the prince-in-law's peace." "Yes, princess," the guards responded with a bang. The third princess held Kayun's hand and Shiren walked out, as if she didn't even hear the cracking sound coming from the house. Inside and outside the palace, all the colors had faded last night and were replaced by a plain white world. In the new capital, all officials of 5th rank and above wore mourning robes, lined up with their heads lowered, and waited outside the door. Even though they had known about the queen's death for a long time, and the body was probably smelly now, everyone was acting like a dramatist at this moment, and they all pretended to be surprised. Occasionally, there will be a high-level official who is surprised and a little sad, with red eyes, and people can't help but secretly want to applaud him for his dedication. The ladies of rank 3 and above were lined up not far behind the officials. They were also dressed in linen mourning clothes, without any jewelry, and their hair was simply held up with wooden hairpins. Including the carriages of each family to serve the entourage, a total of 800 or 900 people gathered at the entrance of the palace. Even a fool knows not to stand out at this time. Therefore, there were crowds of people but there was no sound. It was extremely silent. Soon, Manager Yi came out in person and led everyone in to express their condolences. The courtiers knelt in the white marble square, while the ladies came to Cunning Palace. The white marble, which is usually clean and smooth, was like a furnace in such weather, roasting the knees of all the courtiers like meat. Of course, when you kowtow, you must also bring a red forehead. Inevitably, everyone began to envy the ladies in Cunning Palace. In fact, the married women are miserable right now. In such hot weather, there is no way to ensure the integrity of the body unless it is frozen in ice. It took such a long time and countless trucks were used to crush the ice, but the queen still rotted little by little and became beyond recognition. The married women kneeling in the courtyard not only had to bow and kneel, but also endured the sun's rays. They also had to endure the attack of poisonous gas, which made them almost want to faint. Jian was kneeling in the front row with her grandma, which was even more painful. But fortunately, they were well prepared. When she left home in the morning, Jian gave herself and her grandma 2 injections to temporarily block their sense of smell. Even the frozen sour plum juice is hidden in his arms, and the plain purse tied around his waist is also filled with medicinal materials to remove bad gas. But once the air is close enough, the rotten smell will sting your eyes. Grandparents and grandson don't have to wipe the corners of their eyes with a handkerchief soaked in juice, their eyes are already red. Jian counted the time and found that most of the morning had passed, so he comforted Grandma in a low voice. "Grandma, if you hold on a little longer, you should be able to rest soon." Old Mrs. Lee waved her hands feebly and secretly moved her legs to activate the blood in her knees. "Don't worry, I can still hold on. Don't say anything, or you'll be accused of being disrespectful." Jian nodded and couldn't help but complain in his heart. The royals have always been the biggest double standarders. For the sake of the so-called overall situation, the queen's body can be allowed to rot here without mourning in secret. No one thinks that doing so is disrespectful to the deceased. But if the weeping courtiers and wives are a little bit disgusted and negligent, then they are guilty and deserve to die. Jian knelt for a while longer, pretending that her legs were numb, and tilted her body. Taking this opportunity, she smuggled a piece of mint candy out of her sleeve and quickly stuffed it into her grandma's mouth. The cool and sweet taste instantly made Mrs. Lee energetic. When she looked at her granddaughter with anger, she couldn't help but smile in her eyes. Jian stuck out his tongue quietly and was about to stuff a piece for himself when he heard someone next to him retching quietly. She turned her head slightly and looked over. It turned out to be a gray-haired old woman, older than her grandmother. Perhaps it was too hot, and the rancid smell was too strong. The old woman couldn't hold on, and she didn't dare to keep retching, so she became even more pitiful and embarrassed. Jian hesitated for a moment, but finally couldn't help but feel soft and gently threw a mint candy over. The mint candy fell on the hem of the old woman's skirt, startling her. Jian coughed lightly, and the old woman understood. She immediately picked up the mint without leaving a trace and held it in her mouth. After a while, the old woman's retching stopped. Mrs. Lee saw this and wanted to say something, but she kept her mouth shut. She did not blame her granddaughter for being nosy. At this time, a young suddenly walked through the crowd, walked quickly to Mrs. Lee, and whispered, "Mrs. Lee, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and His Royal Highness the Princess are considerate of your old age, and specially invite you to go to the side hall to chant sutras for you. The Queen prays." After saying that, he saluted the good news with a smile and added, Princess, please come to the side hall and take care of the old lady nearby." Jian felt happy, but when he raised his head and looked at the eyes of everyone, he felt a little hesitant. Don't worry about scarcity, but worry about inequality. At this time, everyone is sunbathing, and only their grandparents and grandchildren can go and rest. It is really eye-catching and makes people jealous. Of course, everyone knows that the prince grew up in Broken Gold Beach, and the princess also loves her like a sister, but this is not the time to be reasonable. Old Mrs. Lee didn't get up either, obviously she was also worried about this. Seeing this, the little quickly moved to the white-haired old woman next to him and said, "Madam, the prince, please come to the side hall to pray together." Without waiting for the town's wife to respond, he rushed elsewhere. In a moment, almost all the older married women in the yard received extra care. There is no jealousy at all. The old women got up one after another and followed the young to the side hall. Ji-Yin walked at the end, supporting her grandma. Before entering the door, she was stopped again and led to the wing not far away. The prince and the third princess were sitting across from each other drinking tea. They were also wearing mourning clothes, but there was no sadness in their expressions. Seeing the ancestors and grandsons of the Li family, they both stood up and took a few steps to greet them. Mrs. Li quickly picked up the good news and was about to kneel down to salute, but was helped up by the third princess. "Old madam, there is no need to be so formal. I just couldn't see you suffering, so I invited you in. If you keep kneeling here and there, it will be in vain." The prince also said, "Yes, madam, sit down quickly." Old Mrs. Li really didn't have the energy to refuse, so she sat down for a long time and drank half a cup of herbal tea before she felt much better. The good news was even more rude when he saw that apart from Kaiun, not even Eunuch Feng was in the room. She drank 2 cups of herbal tea in one breath, pulled the third princess's fan and waved it vigorously for a long time, and then asked, "Don't you need to go to the front, Your Highness? There is also a princess, and the married woman is here to express condolences. Don't you need to come forward?" The third princess responded with a flash of sorrow in her eyes and a sarcastic look on her lips. "I have been dead for how many days, and now I want to cry. What is there to cry about? If my mother dies, I will be free. It would be better to be reincarnated as soon as possible into a wealthy and ordinary family to enjoy happiness." The prince was embarrassed. After all, it was the emperor's decision not to announce the funeral secretly, but in the end, he benefited the most. Ji-Yin quickly changed the subject and asked, "Aren't you talking about copying scriptures? Come, prepare paper and pen. Before lunch, I will copy a copy." End of this chapter.